It was the winter of 1996, in the quiet town of Abilene, Texas, when a man named Brian Bethel sat alone in his car outside a movie theater parking lot, waiting for a friend who was running late. The night was cold, the kind of cold that settles into your bones, and the streets around him were empty except for the hum of a nearby payphone booth and the flicker of a streetlight that refused to stay lit. He was writing checks to mail later, his radio playing low, when a soft knock came at his passenger window. He looked up and saw two boys standing there, maybe 10 or 12 years old, dressed in dark hooded sweatshirts despite the biting cold. One of them, the taller one, asked if he could give them a ride home so they could get money to watch a movie. His voice was polite, almost rehearsed, the kind of politeness that didn't quite match the situation. Brian rolled the window down only a crack, and that was when he noticed something wrong: their eyes. Both boys had eyes that were completely black, no white, no iris, no color at all. Just two flat pools of darkness staring back at him from young, ordinary faces. He felt a wave of dread wash over him, so powerful that his hands began to shake on the steering wheel. The boy kept insisting, his tone shifting from polite to something colder, almost commanding, telling Brian that he needed to let them in, that he had to unlock the door. Brian's instincts screamed at him not to, and without fully understanding why, he started the engine and drove away, leaving the two children standing motionless under the streetlight, watching him go without a single word of protest. When he got home that night, he couldn't sleep, and it would be days before he could shake the feeling that something ancient and wrong had tried to get into his car. He posted his account online not long after, and that single story became the spark that lit a fire across the internet, because within weeks, other people began coming forward with strikingly similar experiences, all involving children with pitch-black eyes appearing at doors, windows, and cars, always asking to be let in. A woman in Oregon described answering her front door late at night to two children, standing on her porch, soaked from the rain, despite there being no rain that night, asking to use her telephone because their mother had been in an accident. She said their voices carried no urgency, no fear, nothing a real child in crisis would have. Just a flat, hollow request, repeated word for word when she hesitated. When she looked closer at their eyes, black from lid to lid, she slammed the door and called the police. But by the time they arrived, the children were gone, and there were no footprints in the wet grass leading away from her Porsche. A truck driver in Kansas told a similar story of stopping at a rest area in the dead of night to sleep for a few hours before continuing his route. He said he woke to a tapping sound on his window and found three children, one of them barely old enough to walk, standing in the gravel lot asking him to open the door so they could warm up. He said something about the way they stood too still, too aligned, like they had been arranged rather than standing there naturally, sent his heart into his throat. And it was only after he refused 3 times that they turned in unison and walked into the tree line without making a single sound, vanishing into the dark as though the forest had swallowed them whole. What makes the black-eyed children so deeply unsettling is not just their appearance, but their behavior, because in nearly every account, they never force their way in. They always ask permission. They knock, they wait, they request, and it is only the person on the other side of the door or window who holds the power to let them cross that threshold, and many who have encountered them describe an overwhelming primal terror that arrives before they even consciously register what's wrong with the children's eyes, as if some ancient part of the human brain recognizes danger before logic can catch up. Some researchers who study the phenomenon believe it may be tied to older folklore about demons and malevolent spirits that require an invitation to enter a home, a concept found across countless cultures throughout history, suggesting that whatever these entities are, they may be bound by rules older than memory itself. Others believe the black-eyed children could be some form of psychic vampire, feeding on the fear their appearance generates, using the mask of childhood innocence specifically because it lowers the guard of adults who instinctively want to help a child in need before their instincts warn them otherwise. A woman named Sarah, who wrote about her experience years later, described opening her door to a single black-eyed boy asking to use her bathroom. And she said the moment she looked into those eyes, she felt as though something ancient was studying her, evaluating her, not with malice exactly, but with a cold, patient curiosity, like a predator assessing whether prey was worth the effort of pursuit. She shut the door without a word and stood frozen behind it for nearly an hour before she found the courage to look out the window again. And when she did, the boy was gone. But the porch light above her door had burned out completely. The bulb shattered from the inside, as though something had exploded within the glass itself. To this day, no photograph, no video recording, no piece of physical evidence has ever definitively captured a black-eyed child. And skeptics argue the phenomenon is nothing more than a modern urban legend, fueled by shared fear and the power of suggestion. A story that spreads because the human mind is remarkably good at recognizing patterns, even patterns that were never really there. But those who claim to have encountered them insist there was nothing imagined about the terror they felt, nothing manufactured about the desperate bone-deep certainty that opening that door, rolling down that window, or extending that single act of kindness would have led to something from which there was no return. And so the stories continue to spread, whispered in comment sections and forums late at night, warnings passed from stranger to stranger, all carrying the same simple, chilling advice that if you are ever alone after dark and you hear a knock at your door and you open it to find a child standing there with eyes as black and empty as the night itself, asking so very politely to be let in, you should remember one thing above all else. Whatever stands on your porch wearing the face of a child is not asking because it needs your help. It is asking because it cannot come in unless you say yes.